Hello everyone, welcome to a new lesson in the language segment, Note Making by Deepshika ma'am. We'll be covering note making in two videos. The second video is important of the two because in that we'll be explaining what CBSE basically expects out of you. In this video, however, I'm going to tell you about various forms of note making, though only one form is important for you. But since all of you are students and have various subjects to tackle, and given the current scenario where you aren't able to take notes in the way that you used to by going to coaching and schools and in that way, and you have a lot of material available online, so I thought that this video will be helpful for you. So if you're only interested in getting marks, please skip over to the next video, and if you want to learn something, please carry on. Moving on. So, what is note making? Note making is basically, in very easy terms, the process of making notes. And why do we make notes? So that we are able to remember whatever was taught or whatever was important at that conference or meeting or being wherever you are in whatever position of your life. If you're a student, then of course revision and stuff. And if you are a working professional, then taking minutes of the meeting maybe. So, as said, note making is not just a process of writing everything down that you read and hear. It is the process of reviewing, connecting, and synthesizing ideas from your lectures or readings. Why make notes? Because if you know that lectures at your school or college will last for around 40 minutes, and in that 40 minutes the effective information given is basically from 10 to 15 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes, so that is note making, taking that 15 minutes out of a series of 40 minutes of lecture, getting out what is important and what covers the entire lecture. That is note making. And how do we do that? We have a couple of steps for that. There are basically 5 types of note making: the outline method, the cornell method, the boxing method, the charting method, and the mapping method. Here, the outline method is the one that CBSE expects out of you. It is precious and the most important form for all college and school going students. It lets you organize your notes in a structured form, help you save a lot of time for further reviewing and editing. Like, suppose if you're studying a chapter, say, in maths, you can't make notes. So, let me give you a physics example. Electrostatics or theory of relativity or any other chapter. And if you go through any book, be it your NCRT or HC Verma or even Irodo, the chapters are not covered in a very concise manner. They give you a lot of stuff. Say if the chapter is spanning over 40 pages or 50 pages, you won't sit and study the entire thing one day before your exam, right? So the process of making notes, taking out the important aspects of the chapter, writing it down in the format that is given on your screen, and reviewing only that before your exams is called outline method. We'll be dealing this in great detail in part 2, so don't worry. Don't think that I'm just giving you an outline of the outline method. We are dealing with this in great detail. So this is how it looks like. I'll tell you the pros and cons of every method. So the pros and cons of outline method is: the pros first. You can highlight the key points of the lecture in a very logical way. Ease of use allows students to focus. Of course, if everything is written down for you, like there's a big paragraph and then from that you've taken out the main aspect, so you can revise it quite easily, and it reduces time for reviewing and editing, no doubts about that. Gives a proper and clean structure to your notes, of course. What are the cons? This is not suitable for subjects like chemistry and maths, where you have a lot of formulas and charts. And especially now that you're in 12th standard, you'll be dealing with integration formulas and differentiation formulas a lot. And the science students will all, of course, be dealing with coordinate geometry and things like that. So you have tons and tons of formulas. So in that, you can't have an outline method because you'll be filling up pages with the formulas itself. So it doesn't work well there. But for subjects like, say, physics or history, geography, and other theoretical subjects, even computers, and if you're studying Java, no, you guys study C++, no. So even for that, it's perfect, and you can continue with this. Of course, it doesn't work well if you haven't attended the lecture, because then you don't know what was conveyed. But this, I'm only talking in the lecture format. If you have studied directly from the chapter, it works good in itself. Moving on to another method, Cornell's method. It is a unique method of note taking that finds out its application in a variety of situations. What differentiates it from the other methods is the page layout. The page is divided into 3 or 4 sections, as you can see on your as you can see on your slides or computers or whichever device you are seeing it on. I'll give you an example. If you have studied from books of foreign authors or publications that are not Indian, you'll see this method used in great style. When we were studying H.C. Verma, even that time this method was used. I don't know if it is used in current format or not, but of course it is used in foreign authors' books. You'll see that the notes are made in one huge chunk column, and beside that, the main points are taken out of it, so that you don't even have to switch on to the notes column if you don't want to. This helps you when at various levels or degrees of busyness. Like if you are not that busy, you can check out the notes column, and if you're super busy and you don't have time, you can just check out the Q column, in which you have just written down the main ideas, the questions, the diagrams. And if you are still busier and you can't check out either of the columns, that is the note column and the Q column, then you can check out the summary column, which is at the beneath of the paper. And in this, you just summarize it and keep it. So when you'll be attending college, you'll realize that you have, surprise quizzes or surprise tests, and this is a very famous activity that they hold in all NITs and IITs. So you'll be given in your first period that you have a quiz for 10% of your marks. In colleges, the exams are taken percentage wise. Like they won't tell you it is for 10 marks or 20 marks, they tell you it is for 10% of the marks. Say, so if your main paper is of 60 marks, so 10% will be 6 marks. But there are some papers in your final years that will range up to 200 marks, so it will attempt for 20 marks. So why was I telling you this? So in that, if you're given an instruction in the first period that in the third period you're having a quiz for 10% of the marks, and say you're final year students, so of course you will not try to miss out on even one of the marks, because it help many of the placement industries these days, be it Cape Gemini or even Caterpillar, they check out marks semester wise. So in that case, the summary columns comes to your rescue, because in 15 minutes you can just do away with everything. So moving on to the pros and cons. The pros: it is a quicker way to take notes and review and organize your notes, summarizes all your information in systematic manner. Let me remind you that the outline method was not summarizing your notes. We had to write a we have to write a separate summary at the end of the outline notes. But in this, the Cornell method, the notes are summarized within your page itself. It helps in effective learning, helps you extract main ideas, cut down on reviewing time. Okay, and what are the cons? Before the lecture, you'll have to prepare your page layout in that way, that you have a Q column and you have a column for your main ideas and then the summary. It requires some time and practice so that you can start taking notes in this manner, given that the education system that we are subjected to, we are not capable of taking notes while we are attending the lecture. So this requires a little practice. Moving on to the next method, the boxing method. As you can see in the photo, you collect, say suppose you're reading a paragraph and it's a long paragraph, and that paragraph is conveying you a lot of information. Say it is about, what should I say, say it's about an accident. Okay, so in that there's given why the accident happened, how the accident happened, when did the accident happen, how many people were involved. So you see, there are basically 3 or 4 ideas that are being covered. So you take out all these clusters of similar clusters of information. Say you take out all the why. Okay, why did the accident happen, and you write them down and box it up, and over that you write why, and then you take out all the ideas which mention the fact how did the accident happen, and then you write them down, box it up, and over that you write how. So basically, one look at the paper and you're done. Why am I explaining you this form of note making? See, one form of note making will not help you with all the subjects. So, therefore, I'm giving you different forms of note making. So, depending on the subject that you are studying now or in college, or even when you're a big executive in a hotshot company and taking down minutes of the meeting, which is a very important aspect of the meeting, you know which method to follow when and which will help you later on. Okay, so this is what the boxing method is. Moving on, the pros and cons, of course. The pros are that it segregates and organizes your notes in the form of boxes. It lets you focus on one box at a time while you're reading. See, suppose that you have read a huge reading comprehension kind of a question, or a huge passage, okay, and from that you have extracted notes in the form of boxes. And if you are questioned later on that on the why aspect or the how aspect, you can just go to that particular box, read it up, and you're sorted. Like, you don't have to read the entire thing, which was available in the Cornell's method and in the outline method. In that, you'll have to look and segregate and understand where that particular information you have to seek out. But here, you can just focus on one particular thing at a time, depending on what you need. It helps you memorize in a relatively easier way, and it's a perfect way to whoever. I hope that many of you are studying digitally and taking notes on your laptops or say iPads or whatever device you have. So I can assure you that it's the best way to take notes on an iPad or a tablet if you're studying there, studying via that device. Okay, moving on to the cons. It's not suitable for every lecture type, doesn't work well with overall topics, if and overall topics assigned to a group of notes. This is there, so you will have to extract the main ideas as I told you in the previous slide. Requires additional time. Of course, this is not a time saving method, it's rather a time consuming method, but if you want it in great detail, the boxing method works good. Now moving on to the next method, which is the charting method. It is an ideal method for notes that involve a lot of information in the form of facts, statistics that needs to be learned by heart. Um, I've given you a great example here itself. Say, like, if you have a particular form of paragraph from for which you have to make notes, which says the how of the incident, the advantages, disadvantages, and when to use it. You can just make charts and hang it up your study board, and this is done. Like, one look at it and you're done. I'll give you an example. Now that you all graduated from standard 10, you wouldn't need it that much. But say when you were studying geography or history, and there were many kingdoms and civilizations associated with your history. Say the Pandavas, the what kingdoms were there? The Indus Valley civilization, the Pandavas, the Cholas down in the south, and the Mughal civilizations, Mughal kingdom dynasties, all that. I'm sorry, I don't remember them pretty well. It's been a long time. So when all that was there, all you could have done is charted it out in a big paper, and hung it up your study board, and you would have been sorted rather than taking down notes in the outline method. So you see, like, certain forms of note taking is helpful in certain subjects and certain are good for the other ones. Moving on to the pros and cons of the charting method. um, yeah, the pros: information is clearly structured. It is great for reviewing. Like, reviewing means, like, once you've made the notes and you need to revise, it is superb for reviewing. Notes are easily comparable, of course. Say, when you're talking about things like advantages and disadvantages, or say when you're talking about, a four-stroke engine and a two-stroke engine, where you have to compare and contrast and things like that, okay? A lot of information can be memorized quickly, of course, because when you are looking it as a comparative study, it will be there in your retention for a long time. The cons are, it's very time consuming. You can't take this while attending a lecture. You'll have to attend the lecture, understand it, write it down entirely, and then make notes in this format, because of course you don't know in which direction the teacher will sway. They won't dictate it to you, right? Like this lecture is just given and the teacher comes up and gives out all his information. It is then up to you how you structure that information that has been given to you. So, of course, while listening to the lecture, you can't take notes in this form. You'll have to come back home and then structure it out this way. So, that's the only con, I would say. Moving on to a very essential method that will help you out in various aspects of your life is the mapping method. I've given you an example of integration here because I thought, since all of you are science students, it will help you. I have given you see, if you see in the at the very aspect of it, at the center, the core idea of the mind map is integration. Then there are various aspects or chains or derivatives. A derivative is a very wrong term to use in integration, but or various sub points that extract out of integration. Say how to calculate the volume of a shape, or area across the y-axis and the x-axis, the trapezoidal rule, or say the definite integrals, the chain rules. These are various aspects that come out of integration. So you bring out charts and then you put it down, so you don't have to turn pages across pages to just go to the chain rule or to go to the trapezoidal rule or different rules that are available. It's just there in front of you in a diagrammatic and schematic format. And this note will help you. Mapping method is basically mind mapping method. Once you have listened through this lecture, I'll request you all to go to Google and just Google what are mind maps. These are excellent techniques to help you get through any of the subjects that you've been studying up until now. It helps you organize your notes by dividing them into branches and enabling you to establish relationship between various topics. Now, if you look at it, you'll understand what is the relation between area or volume, chain and definite, and things like that. And I'm giving you an example of maths because all of you study maths. It can be worked across various spectrums of subject. Uh, Start with writing the main topic of the at the top of the map. Keep dividing into subtopics on the left and right as you go down. Okay, so this is how mapping method works. After you've listened to this, I request you all to go to Google and then Google what are mind maps. You'll find them pretty interesting, I believe. The pros and cons, of course, it is clearly structured. It is fantastic for reviewing. Notes are easily comparable. And cons are, you might run out of space if you are covering a huge topic, because then each branch gets divided into further sub branches. So that is all for note making. It's a very crucial part of any student's life, and I hope that you've understood various formats of note making. And in part 2 we'll be dealing with the outline note making in great detail. This is what CBSE expects out of you. This current video was only for helping you out. The second video is what you need to get good marks. So set your priorities and then check it out. Thank you.